Behind the Shades.
I am a holistic health coach and I help women heal from chronic illness and as well as autoimmune issues and conditions. And the purpose of this is to help them feel alive again, because when we are facing these kind of conditions and illnesses and struggles, it can feel like our world is over. And so the work that I love doing in this world is showing women that this doesn't have to be their life. They don't have to be given a sentence to misery and pain.
I think sometimes we think that I'm born, I'm over 25, my life isn't good. But in a way, it is really good. And you're going to touch on some of the struggles, maybe, or some of the situations that we have. So when you mentioned the autoimmune illness that you shared with me, which one exactly are you experiencing, and what has been some of the impact to your life regarding it?
Great question. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease back in 2012. Prior to that diagnosis, I was struggling with symptoms for about a year and a half before I was finally able to find out what was wrong with me and why my body was doing the things that it was doing. And although I am very healthy now and have all these a very healthy lifestyle, back then I definitely did not have a healthy lifestyle. And of course, you can have a healthy lifestyle and be diagnosed with an autoimmune. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but for me and my journey, it was when my habits were at their worst and where I literally just didn't take care of myself, ate poorly, stayed up late, didn't have a good relationship with myself, yet alone the people around me. And so when I'm able to look back at that situation today, it makes a lot of sense. Everything was out of balance in my world. And so it all came crashing down. And now, as I sit here today, I'm able to view this entire situation as a blessing in disguise, because being told you have an illness without any cure, or that they don't really know how to treat it. That's what was happening at the time when I was diagnosed. Hey, we don't know how we're going to fix this, but we have faith. It didn't feel very reassuring that I was going to get better. And so knowing that there wasn't a cure for this, I honestly had a hard time coming to terms with it and to accept that, something had to change. But fast forward down the line, this experience was really able to show me that that wasn't the life for me. And that's not what I was put on this earth for. And now I'm helping other people with this beautiful work. So it's just been such a wild and crazy ride, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
At what age did you find out that you had this illness?
I was 21 at the time.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is because in our 20s, I don't know about you, Jennifer, but for me, I felt like I was bulletproof. Like, if you ever watched the movie like The Matrix, I felt like I can dodge bullets. I felt like I can jump in the air and just fly and just take off, because because everything is just firing in all cylinders, right? Like, you can eat essentially what you want, still look pretty good. But many of us, we hit a certain point in our life, usually older, but for you, you're younger, usually older, or like, okay, I can't eat spicy food because my stomach, I'm having a little bit of indigestion, a little bit gassy, things like that. But you got that so young. And at 21, when you realize that I'm going through this, was it like your world was completely upside down at that point?
Absolutely. It definitely did. Because as you said, when you're at that age, you're living your best moments. You're doing all the things, you're saying yes to everything. And, there's no repercussions for anything that you're doing or actions you're taking. And I was very much like that growing up as a young child and a teenager. I was a little bit rebellious. Sorry, mom and dad. I always went to my my own direction, and no one could really tell me like, hey, you should try this. Like this might be better than this option. I would always take the other option. And so being told this and having this happen, a lot of the resistance came up around that, because as a 21-year-old would think, like, I don't want to have to change my eating habits. I don't want to, go to bed early. I want to drink and party like I am 21 years old. Right. So it was definitely very hard to accept at that age. But now, as I sit here, I'm actually really thankful that it did, because, there were times when I was a few years prior to my diagnosis, and I remember just staying up late, partying, having like this mindset that there was no outcomes from my actions. And I would be so tired the next day, and I'd be going to work or I'd be going to school, and I'd be like, how am I going to live? Like, I'm so drained and tired, and there's got to be more to life than this. So now I'm able to say, thank goodness that this happened when I was 21, and that I didn't abuse my body, my vessel, for this whole period of time until I was older. And yeah, I was able to really turn it around. So I'm thankful for that.
I remember a time in my 20s where I used to party, like how you're describing it. I wasn't really a drinker, but I would party. And I remember having an extra pair of clothes in my trunk. Right? It was to the point where I was like, okay, I've been out so late that, do I go home? So I used to going to work. Thank God I don't work at this place anymore, because I'm probably going to be like, oh my God, Train, you did that. And I would shower there. Have my clothes in the car, in the trunk, because you feel like you're invincible. You feel like Superman. You feel like Wonder Woman, right? You just feel like nothing can stop you. No one can tell you anything in your life. But then you get something, your stomach bothers you, you falling asleep, you need your power naps. And for those watching, let me tell you something. I love my naps. Even though I'm not in my 50s or 60s, I love my power naps. So when you figured that out and you made that change, as you look back, Jennifer, are you surprised at some of the things that you did? And maybe you're kind of happy it wasn't worse for you as you got older?
Yes, that's a great question. At the time, I did what you shouldn't do. Everything the doctor said, you got to stop doing this or change this. I decided to do that even more, because the rebellious side of me was thinking, no, I'm unstoppable. This isn't going to take me down. And as you can imagine, I realized quite quickly that this was not going to fix my mess that I was in. And so things didn't get better, they got worse. And actually to the point where I was at risk for having my colon removed, because my doctor found precancerous cells. And he had never seen a case like this in someone so young, and he was quite concerned. And that was a huge turning point. That's when I started to take a new direction. I started with my eating habits, and then I started to prioritize rest. I started working out. I started running. I started figuring out all the things I needed to bit by bit. And then eventually it led me to remission. It didn't happen overnight, but it was really fun to go down this road that I had never been down. My sister was always active growing up, and same with my younger brother. And yet I never really had my thing. I just did whatever I want. I didn't care about taking care of my body or being active. And so it was just so amazing to take this new direction where I was able to discover that I really love to lift weights. This is so much fun and it's empowering. And especially because I had dropped 20 pounds within a matter of weeks and felt so weak. This was my way of rebuilding resiliency in myself physically, but also mentally and emotionally as well.
So you mentioned that it was Crohn's disease is what you ended up with. For those who don't know, what are some of the impacts or maybe the characteristics of having that or life with Crohn's disease?
So mornings aren't fun. I would wake up and I would usually have to have about 8 to 10 bowel movements per day before even starting the day. So my schedule was always around this, where I would wake up and not want to do anything because I knew I would need the washroom for so long and I wouldn't want to go out. I wouldn't want to be seen. I'd always be thinking, oh, is there going to be a washroom nearby? And so it did really impact me, because then I would be at home for most of my morning and I would not really have energy because you're losing so much out of you. So you feel drained and you don't have that zest for life, because you're thinking of all how bad you feel and how poor your whole entire body feels. At one point, I couldn't swallow. Crohn's disease it can run from your colon all the way up to your esophagus. So at one point, there must have been inflammation in my esophagus because I couldn't even swallow properly. So I couldn't eat anything. And it's also very frustrating, as you don't know what foods you can eat and what foods are going to make you miserable. And there's a lot more information out there now. But during this time, I remember Googling and getting a book, and it would always say something along the lines as, we don't know what you can eat, and we don't really know where you can even really start. But here's a list of foods to avoid. And it had anything you could think of. And you're like, what am I going to eat then if all the foods are here? What am I supposed to do with this? So that was a very frustrating component of it, for sure, is not knowing what to eat and fearing what would happen after you ate whatever it was that you were attempting and trying to figure out, is this good or not good for me? So that was very frustrating.
Did it feel like you were kind of being isolated from what many people would call a normal life at that point?
Definitely, yes. No one understood what I was going through. So I felt completely isolated. No one really understands. You feel so embarrassed. Now I'm able to share this information and not really care. But during the time, you don't want to share this information with people. And you're thinking all the worst case scenario of, oh, how will I get a job that starts in the morning if I'm always dealing with this? So I definitely felt all alone in this whole process, for sure.
And now you're using your experience to but you're using your experience to help others. I know that you mentioned that when you're going through it and you're Googling, because I think that's the first stop for everyone when they have something, right? It's like, I feel this way, let me go to Google. But instead of you searching for the resource, you are becoming the resource for others. So how does that feel for you, knowing that you're doing this work and you're helping others in a way that maybe you were or weren't helped when you were going through it?
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is teaching my clients how to get from A to B, which is from feeling how they're feeling to feeling amazing, with a lot less mistakes than I made, because I stayed stuck for so long and had so much to undo that I didn't even realize that no one ever pointed me in that direction. I took care of myself physically and through exercise and nutrition, yet I didn't see myself go into remission. So I was left wondering, well, why aren't I better? What is happening? And so that's when I really discovered that, hey, there needs to be that mental shift and there needs to be that emotional work that you do as well, because there's so much energy that might be trapped within you that's keeping you stuck. And it wasn't until I really worked through that emotional component, especially, that I saw remission and continue to be in remission. And so being able to share that with my clients, who are often come to me asking, hey, what supplement can I take? Or what should my nutrition plan look like? I love showing them that it's a holistic approach. It's not just the physical side of things. We have these different parts of ourselves. So all those parts need to heal in order to bring yourself back into balance.
Was there something that you struggled with when dealing with this before you went into remission?
100%. Letting go, letting go, forgiveness of other people that I had experiences with prior to this happening. And then also with myself and my own physical body, I had to forgive and I had to accept that this was the new norm and something needed to change. And it wasn't until I really, really honed in on that, forgiving people from my past and also forgiving myself and the situation for happening. Once I did that, it was the last thing I needed to do to move along on my journey. So it was so powerful.
When you say forgiveness, does that mean there was some blame maybe on your part?
That's a great question. As I think back, I don't really see that I blamed myself. I think I blamed external factors or people. So I didn't blame me, but I blamed other people that were in my life around the time that I did get sick. And now the me sitting here today, as I look back, I want to say to my old self, you're a little bit silly. Like you brought this on yourself. So the old me wouldn't have known that. But yes, as I sit here today, I'm able to look back, not in a mean way or be like, hey, why'd you do that? But I can see how I played a huge role in it as well, and not just the people that I blamed around that time, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's such a humbling experience when you fall ill or when someone around you falls ill. And I've spoke to, and you've probably done this as well, so many people who are going through something. And one of the most popular questions is, why me? What did I do to deserve this? And sometimes we don't look within, we look without. And as you mentioned, some people may say that I blame or I think it's because of this. Like some people may turn to say, okay, it's God's fault. It's my parents' fault. They gave me bad genes. It's everything else. So when I ask that question, I always like to get into that person's perspective and say, and just understand what they're going through, because even though I may go through something else that's a little bit different, I think the state of mind is the same because we're all dealing with something. Because this year, I'm going to be celebrating another birthday, God willing. And it's like, Trent, you're getting older, man. Like you're going to have to come to terms with that at some point, right? But I think coming to terms with Crohn's disease or another illness so young is a different state of mind. Is that something that you have to discuss with your clients to get them mentally prepared, which may take a little bit longer than the physical side?
Yes, that's a great thing that you're pointing out. It often does take a little bit longer than the physical side. And it is something I work with, as I mentioned earlier, with showing them the way without without as many mistakes as I made. A big mistake I did make for a very long time was have that victim mindset. I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is all my fault or someone else's fault, but I was thinking a lot of why me and poor me and no one understands me. And I was swept up in the victim mindset. And the victim mindset just keeps you stuck because that subconscious mind just starts telling you, well, just, go out and drink or go eat something, is going to bother your stomach. And who cares? Why get better? Nothing's working, right? So it keeps you in this vicious cycle. So that's definitely a big component of the work I do with clients, is showing them that victim mindset, hey, it serves a purpose. There's obviously something we need to heal, but how do we look into what that is and how do we make amends of that? And so that you can continue to move forward and instead have a more positive perspective on what's going on.
Looking back on your older self, did you feel that you would have been able to get out of that victim mindset when you did?
At one point, no, I didn't even realize I was in that mindset. It hasn't been until the last few years, I want to say 5 years, that I've really been able to look back and say, oh, wow, no wonder you didn't get to where you wanted to go. You were thinking all this way of, what's the point? And might as well just give up and I'm going to live a bad life because of this. So might as well go out with a bang. Those were all the thoughts I was having. And I had no idea I was even having that perspective because I was just so narrow focused on all the things going wrong instead of looking at what was possible. And it's like almost blurry where it became possible. Almost one day I woke up and like, what? How did I get here?
It's like that song, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. Like it just makes sense. It just
Exactly.
makes
Yes.
sense. Um, so I want to touch on some of the work that you're doing with your clients now. Is there like when someone comes to you, let's say for example me, I'm struggling with something, I'm deep rooted in the victim mindset, Jennifer. I've fallen and I can't get up, right? And I'm trying to get you to help me. Um, what's the initial conversation like with someone like me who is deep rooted in it? I come to you and I say, Jennifer, please fix me because I can't fix me.
That's great. So the first thing I do with most of my clients when they first come to me is auditing and awareness, because like I said, when we don't even realize how we're stuck, it can be hard to see that. But when you have that outsider perspective, or when you actually do some work around your lifestyle, around your thoughts, around your mood, around your nutrition, your sleep, your stress, that's when you start to kind of take a step back so that you can look in and realize, whoa, what is happening here? I don't like this. So how do I change that? So not to say I want people having that moment of, oh my gosh, what have I done? But it is part of the process. You need to have that awareness. Otherwise, there is not that motive behind making change and taking action.
So when you're helping them with the nutrition side, the physical, the mental, is there something that you've come up with that is like helping them, or is it tailored to each person specifically?
Yes. So each person is tailored specifically based on their goals. Some of the clients that come to me, their goal is to lose weight because they've gained weight from the condition they have or from the medications that they're on. And some people have the complete opposite goal where they've dropped a lot of weight and they're malnourished and they're not absorbing nutrients. So for them, it's a completely different process because we have to work on getting them into a state where they are absorbing nutrients properly so that they can start to strength train and start to build muscle. Sometimes with those particular clients, the last thing you would want to do is to put them under this very challenging workout, and then they won't be able to replenish that energy through their nutrition because they're not absorbing everything. So it all depends on the client as to what direction I'm going to take based on their unique situation and where they are at.
I may have to hit you up to help me gain some weight because I'm trying to get to 200 pounds, right? I'm trying to get to 200 pounds of muscle just because I want to. It's not because it's like a health thing. It's just because it's something I want to do. But I like that it's holistic, meaning that you have people that you're helping that have different parts of their life that they're struggling with, but it's still all under the autoimmune illness banner, right?
Yes, that's correct. It is all under the autoimmune banner, but some people, again, the roadmap we take might look completely different. Some clients need a lot of work with the emotional side of things and their mindset. So that's where we'll focus our energy. Whereas some clients, they have that in check and they are grounded and they have worked through their trauma from the past. And so for them, it might look more heavy on the nutrition and the movement side of things. So it definitely all depends on each client and where they're at and what they've done and what's worked and what hasn't worked.
Does trauma come up a lot in the people that you deal with? Because when I hear about trauma, the impacts of it is so significant, but it varies from person to person. So does that come up in what you do?
Yes, 100% it does. And it's great that you're pointing that out. I think when we hear the word trauma, we often think of this really, really huge accident or something very terrible happening. And what we fail to see is that these small things can actually cause a lot of trauma where we're carrying all that energy, because all our cells are storing all that energy and we don't even realize it. So a big part of what I do is teaching clients that, you know, there is a way to let go of this energy. And I show them how to do that through journaling and visualization, as well as even breath work. How do we let go? Because sometimes they don't even realize that they're holding on to energy that has been stored within them for years sometimes.
When you're doing that work with them, I'm guessing you probably have people from different walks of life, right? You have this, you're helping people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different ages, different sex, gender, everything. So when you continue your work, Jennifer, what's something that you would want to leave, or what type of advice would you want to give to the next generation who's seeking out help in regards to this? Because when you went through it, you mentioned there are some mistakes, there weren't as many resources, but now you're a lot more experienced. For the next generation coming up, what would you want to tell them?
The biggest thing would be to not give up. I think a lot of us think that, you know, we'll take this pill or we'll take this supplement or we'll eat this and we'll just naturally be cured. But what's important to remember is that your symptoms didn't come from just nowhere out of the blue overnight. So we have to be patient with the things that we're doing, and it might take a little bit of time. So the most important thing is to not give up before you've given enough chance to see results and see improvements.
What type of legacy do you want to leave the world regarding your work?
That no matter what challenge you face or what is put on your plate, that you can overcome it and that you can build resiliency and become a better version of yourself. It doesn't mean it's the end. It's who do I need to become and step into this new version so that I can become better. And, you know, and then it just keeps going from there. It's so powerful.